Hey y'all, I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday. It is a beautiful day here in Florida. They said we're going to get a little rain, but I don't think it's going to happen. So I'm enjoying this beautiful day out here now. Sunday now, on Wednesday, that's going to mark my 74-day countdown to my 74-day motorcycle trip across the country and back. And so I want to share a little bit more about what this tour is about and what I'm going to be doing and why I'm going to be doing it. Now, in 2017, I was cast as Will Rogers in the Will Rogers Follies here at the Players Theater, and I really didn't know anything about Will Rogers. But I watched the speech he did on YouTube, and I was like blown away, and I just loved him immediately. So as we're doing the show, I started reading more of what he did in his career, and if you don't know, 100 years ago, he was the biggest celebrity of his time. On stage, screen, radio, print, he was like the biggest box office star. He was the host of the Ziegfeld Follies. He had a weekly radio show. He had a weekly column in the newspaper. He had daily telegrams that were syndicated all over the place. Everybody knew Will Rogers and loved Will Rogers. And he never met a man he didn't like. So he published like over 2 million words in his career. So there's a lot of stuff that obviously did not get used in the Will Rogers Follies Broadway show. And I started reading all this other stuff, and for me, I've had an issue with our little political system here in America for a while. And I came into the world in August of 1971, just about a dozen days before President Nixon took the money off the gold standard. And so I've had a fiat currency for the entirety of my life. So money's always just been what we think it is. And then, I'm introduced to the presidency by the first guy who ever got kicked out of office. And so since then, I've had some issues with it, and when I was first registered as a voter, I was a good Christian boy, and I registered as a Republican like my parents did. And eventually I saw that those principles and ideas really didn't resonate with me, and I became independent for a long time. Now, currently, I have to register as a Democrat if I want to participate in a primary in Florida, because Florida does not give anyone who's not a member of the Republican or Democratic Party the right to vote in primaries. You can only vote after the Republicans and Democrats decide who you're able to vote for. And unfortunately, that's kind of the way our whole political system works. So 100 years ago, Will Rogers was like on it, and he could see all of the problems that this two-party system was having, and he called out the Democrats and he called out the Republicans, but they weren't really at a point where they could take any of it seriously. It was humor, and it was true, but there wasn't anything anybody could do about it. And for the last 100 years, it's kind of been the same thing. And we have a lot of people in this generation who still believe the same thing. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are ubiquitous. They are part of the reality we were grown into. They're what we know as normal, and very few of us have any possibility or any hope of that changing. They're in power, and that's just the way that it is. And a lot of us just shrug our shoulders and accept this horrible limitation on our freedom, that everything in our government must be decided by these two organizations. They're nonprofit corporations, but they're still corporations. They're still just human entities, things that we have created. And they don't have to be eternal entities if we don't want them to. So, after doing my Will Rogers Follies, I created a show called Will Rogers Revived, which was like everything I could find of him, and I weaved it all together, and I had different topics on politics and government and parties, and I also had things on debt and Americanism and little insights in education, those kind of things. And more recently, since I've had this vision to have this tour and to continue to use this show for the next few years, I've kind of trimmed that show down, and I've infused a few of my original poems and original songs that kind of speak to what he was getting at back then. And so I call the show Get the Bunk Out Now, because Will Rogers was also the first and only presidential candidate for the anti-bunk party. This was a party that the Life magazine, which was a comedy magazine back then, they made this up, and they nominated him, and he said his first campaign promise was that if he were elected, he would resign. So he had a lot of fun with it, but of course when they didn't get any electoral votes, he said that it was because the party was 100 years ahead of time. That was 94 years ago. So I figure, is that right, 94? Maybe 96? I'm not mathematically gifted. Either way, it's about 100 years ago. So I'm thinking the anti-bunk party needs another shot, because, as he said, the anti-bunk party isn't like the Democrats and Republicans, where they're in politics for what they can get out of it, and all the self-seeking. They were in it for what they could get out of it. They could kick out of it, the bunk. And we need to kick bunk out of politics. And right now, the fact that you have to be beholden to one of these two extremist parties that have been ridiculously ineffective and that have caused us to have Congress with a 20% approval rating for the last decade or so, that's a bunch of bunk. We need to kick that out. So that's how I've kind of renovated this new show. And so far, I have not booked a single performance on this tour yet. I have a map of where I plan to go, and I do have interest in North Carolina, in Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas so far, but I haven't actually booked anything. So if you see the video of what I plan for the show, it's a 3-minute video that kind of highlights it. It really talks more about just Will Rogers, but I want to be able to get out there and be able to at least raise people's minds in the sense that, can we start at least to consider the possibility that we can do a ranked choice voting system. That's not in the Constitution the way we do it now. So we can try that out. And every state, every one of the 50 states can experiment with their own version of that. We can continually make improvements, I know there's a lot of movement toward just conserving what is, but we can change things. So that's my hope, is to get out there and do that. And I'm getting noised out over here by a lawnmower. So I'll leave you at that. I hope you can catch up with me on the tour. You can find me on stevemc.xyz or Steve McAlphabet at any platform you want to. So it's going to be a great trip. And thanks for coming along on this one. See you.